You know what? If you're trying to prioritize, put that thing in the front of the list. If your goal is to get big guns, big biceps and triceps, do arms first, right? Because you'll have the most energy available to put into that. That's just a little side note.
We are about to launch.
All right, we got to do an intro.
We're doing an intro.
Truth,
Not
trends. What's up, everybody? TNT Strength in the house, in the studio, live. Jesse Schmidt and Liam Bauer right here, changing the world one set at a time, training outside the box.
What's going on, folks? This is the podcast where we help you maximize your strength as safely
and efficiently
as possible. My name is Jesse Schmidt, and I've been a strength coach for 2,517 days.
I concur.
TAKU concurs with that.
My name is Liam Bauer. I've been a strength coach for 36 years, and I'm still going.
Amazingly, at the young age of 97 years old, he's still trucking.
All those whippersnappers can't stop me.
We got a solo round going today, folks.
Solo round. Here we are.
Covering a lot of ground, covering the basics of evidence-based strength training for you.
That's right, a little bit of effort-based. We're following up quickly. We did our little bit on how to get a trainer, how to build a home gym. Well, how do you get started with the stuff? Just doing some good hard work. So today we talked about effort-based training. We talked about intensity of effort, recommendations on each one of these things. We talked about load and repetition range. We talked about the duration of the reps. We talked about rest intervals. We talked about the volume and the frequency. We talked about endurance training and lifting, how to combine them. Does it matter? Does one get in the way of the other one? We talked about range of motion, machines versus free weights, training and taking time off from training. And we gave you not one, not two, not three, not four, but 7 guidelines on how to build a strength training program with any tool available.
Booyah. So we got a great episode lined up for you here. Before we get to the episode, we want you to remember to check out tntstrength.com to check out our TNT Strength nutritional supplements.
That's
now,
right.
At TNT, of course, we recommend eating a high protein whole food diet, but you might find you have some gaps or need a protein shake, here and there. So we have 5 supplements available there on the website. They are, of course, whey protein, and it's delicious. It's chocolatey. We've been getting some great feedback about it lately from some of our clients. It doesn't clump. It's not chunky. It's not chalky. It's yummy and delicious. Get that protein needs, bump them up. You're out there working hard. We got some probiotics. Gut health is all the rage these days. We all need to feed our little happy microbiome the right stuff. Some prebiotics, some probiotics. Keep it happy. We got them right here. We got some fish oil for you. Fish oil's been around for a long time, millions of years actually. Since the fish have been around.
That's right. Who knows how long they've been around? Someone knows, but it isn't me. It's delicious. It's nutritious. It's good for you in all kinds of ways. Good for your joints. Good for anti-inflammatory things. Great stuff. Love my fish oil. Take it multiple times a day. We have also some creatine monohydrate, the best strength training supplement around. It's been highly researched. It's good for your brain. It's good for energy. It's good for getting stronger. It's good for all kinds of good stuff. And what else do we have? K2D3. We know vitamin D is important for them immunities. And of course, the K2 is synergistically helps with that absorption.
By Grabthar's hammer, what a savings.
I concur.
Dynamite drop-in money. That broadcast school has really paid off.
So people, check out tntstrength.com. We offer free shipping anywhere in the continental United States.
We also have an awesome blog over there. Don't miss it.
Check out the blog. And check out this podcast, Solo Round, on the foundational principles of evidence-based strength training.
Boom. What's up, everybody? We're back. Truth Not Trends in the studio. We're following up on our super duper 2-part series, turning into a 3-part series about how to get started working in the gym. We talked a little bit about how to find a good personal trainer.
Found him
Found him
right here.
We talked.
I looked in the mirror.
We talked a little bit about how to build a home gym. You know, what kind of equipment you might get depending on your budget and your space and all that kind of stuff. Now we just got to get to the nitty gritty of you picked out your spot. You're either working in a gym or you're working at home. If you're working with a trainer, hopefully they're going to be a trainer that's going to teach you how to do things the right way. And hopefully, if you've been listening to the Truth Not Trend podcast, and I know you have listened to all 160 episodes already, that we are effort based, which means it's about the work. It's about the quality, not the quantity. So we're going to get down into the nitty gritty today. Jesse's just going to hang out and be the silent color commentator. All right. So we always talk about intensity around here. So we're going to start right there. Intensity. Why is it important? What is it? What does it mean? So when you lift weights, muscle fibers are recruited, which means that as repetitions continue to become more difficult, your body demands that more muscle fibers come into play and perform work. On that final repetition, the point of failure, what we call momentary muscular failure or positive muscular failure, all the fibers that are going to be possibly recruited have been recruited. They're pulled in. And this is the most important step in triggering muscle growth, or what the fancy guys like to say is hypertrophy, which is a fancy word for muscle growth.
Getting bigger.
Getting them big muscles. So what are our recommendations based on this idea of intensity and recruitment? Train to momentary muscular failure in order to recruit all the possible muscle fibers. Do not train to some arbitrary set number of repetitions. So all these stupid things you see on Instagram and everything, 4 sets of 8 and 5 sets of 7 and 10 sets of 12, like, where did they come up with those numbers, right? I always like to ask them because there is no answer, because they're just making shit up. So the reality is, one all-out set, no matter how many you do, on one of them, make sure you go to failure where you literally cannot perform another perfect repetition, right?
I would agree with that. I concur.
Dynamite drop in money.
I'm glad you concur. All right. Another thing might come up is like, how do I know how much weight to lift? Does it matter? Higher reps for tone and low reps for bulk, right? We've been hearing all these things for years, man. It seems like that stuff is still floating around out there. Okay, when it comes to the load or the repetition range, if a set of repetitions is performed to failure, it really makes no difference how much weight or load that you use. Okay, this comes with a small caveat. Okay, there are limits to this. For instance, if you choose a weight which you can do like 30 reps or maybe 1 rep, it's unlikely that you're going to optimally stimulate stuff, right? Because one could be potentially dangerous. That's why we don't do 1 RMs. In our model, we don't really recommend it. I've actually never recommended 1 RMs. I used to, even in the days when I did a lot of periodization and wanted to calculate things like that, I would never go below like a 3 to 5 RM because there's a million formulas out there where you can base that. Nobody needs to do a 1 RM unless you're a competitive weightlifter of some kind. But otherwise, the studies that have found that there's little difference in hypertrophy, again, our fancy word for muscle growth, whether we use 30% of our virtual 1 RM or 90% of our virtual 1 RM. What that means is whether we use a lighter load and we take longer or more repetitions to reach positive failure, or we use a slightly heavier load and we reach positive failure sooner, there's not a big difference. So you can sort of do whatever feels more comfortable for you, just keeping in mind that if you choose the lighter loads, there's the 2 problems are you might fail for other reasons, not just momentary muscle. You might just become uncomfortable or you're not conditioned for it. And it also is less efficient because it might take longer. So, and again, if it's too heavy, you're exposing yourself to more potential risk. So that's where those moderate loads come into play. Most people are usually somewhere in that 70 to 80% of their virtual 1 RM. So that's what we recommend. The recommendations:
I concur.
Select a weight somewhere between 75 and 80% of your virtual 1 RM and do reps to failure, which is optimal for strength, muscular endurance, and bone density. What do you think, Eric?
I agree.
All right.
Eric concurs.
That was Eric, everybody, and Eric concurs. And that's all that you need to know about Eric.
That broadcast school has really paid off.
All right. What's our next one? Am I on a roll? Should I just keep going? I'm rolling. All right.
Tell me a story about one of these. It's too much.
A story.
Gobbledygook. Technical gobbledygook.
What kind of story do you want?
I don't know.
All right. One day I was in the gym and I stumbled upon The world's greatest contortionist. No, that's got nothing to do with it. I don't know. I couldn't think of a story. I'm not sure what kind of story you want. You tell a story.
Well, I was training somebody this morning. Won't say who, but
We won't say who.
I said, we're almost done. And she said, all right, I'm used to longer workouts, so I think that'll be fine. and the thought went through my head, why would you want to do a longer workout?
Good question.
And so as we talk about some of these subtopics here, we always want to bring it full circle and frame it, from our perspective, which is that when we're strength training, right, that's what we're talking about here. We're lifting weights with the purpose of building strength. Our goal is to help people stimulate positive changes with the least amount of effort possible, the least amount of work, right? Volume of work. And so that question of, well, do I do a 1 rep max or a 3 rep max or 5 or 10 rep max? And do I work out for 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour? There's some subjectivity to it, but we always want to, number one, make sure we're safe. And that's why earlier Liam said that we don't really do 1 rep maxes, because when you're doing a 1 rep max, you're kind of skirting this line between what's the maximum number of weight I can lift for 1 repetition and am I going to tear something?
Yeah,
Because I can't quite lift it.
Yeah.
Depending on, which side of the line you're on there. So a 1 rep max is less safe than a 5 or a 10 rep max, which is where we live most of the time with our clients. And then to that client's point of, well, I could do a longer workout. Well, yeah, we all could do a longer workout. But my question is, why would you want to do a longer workout? And I think the answer for her is that she just likes to do longer workouts. There's not really a science-based reason for it. It's more of just an emotional, like, I want to go move my body for an hour. Mm-hmm. And if that's you, then that's great. And go do that. But what our perspective is, we want to help people, right? We help people build strength in 2 30-minute workouts per week. We want to be very efficient with it, because the avatar client that we're working with doesn't have a lot of time to waste inside of a gym. They just want to get the gains and go on with their life. But there are some people out there who are kind of like how people play it with work. They're like, oh my God, I'm so tired. I've put in so many hours at the office this week. I can barely keep my eyes open. And it's this like struggle competition. People are like that with workouts too, where they're like, oh my God, I worked out 2 hours a day for 16 days straight. I haven't even taken a day off. And we take the opposite approach. We're just trying to make sure we stimulate positive changes and move on to the next thing.
There you go. That was a story for you right there. I get the clients all the time. They're just, while they're doing the set, they look at me and they go, am I done? While they're in the middle of it. I'm like, I don't know. Are you? Is this the end? You have to find out. But yeah, some of them they're waiting for you to tell them to stop. I think they're waiting for that number. Like, was it 10? Is that it? Or I actually have some clients that are just counting in their heads, right? And they stop.
A lot of people
like,
do that.
Why did you stop? I did 15. I'm like, well, where did you come with that number?
Yeah, which frankly, that could work, as long as you're progressive. If you did 10 last time, then count to 11 this time. And the next time, count to 12. And it might be a slow way to progress, but if you do it every time, you will progress.
Yeah. So talking about that, we're going to talk about repetition duration, or, cadence. Out there in the world, sometimes if you're nerding out on this stuff, or depending on the coaches you're working with, you'll see people prescribing certain things like 3 seconds to lift it and 1 second to pause and 5 seconds to lower it, and all. There's a million of these little cadences out there, or they'll be like X, which means like as fast as possible on the positive, and then a pause, and then a 5 second negative. There's all these different recommendations. So the most important thing for us is that we keep tension in the muscle. All right. So our kind of bread and butter pace is usually about 3 to 5 seconds to lift the weight and 3 to 5 seconds to lower the weight. So 6 to 10 seconds per repetition. Again, some guys will use what they call super slow, where they're literally consciously trying to choose to move the weight slowly, 10 seconds to lift it, 10 seconds to lower it. Again, we use all different types of protocols, but our kind of home base is somewhere in that 3 to 5 range. And the most important reason why we're doing that, again, is safety. We want to move slow so that the repetitions will maintain muscular tension. And when we use fast reps and there's momentum, there's jerking, it's less efficient. the muscles are not loaded as effectively, and it again exposes us to more potential risk. So the recommendation there is lift slowly enough to maintain muscular tension. In these extreme cases, or very slow cases, you might be doing the 10 up, 10 down, though it doesn't appear to be necessary, right? There's been studies done where they compare the various repetition speeds. And again, similar to the idea that you can lift a lighter weight or a heavier weight and get similar outcomes, the repetition speeds seem to show a similar outcome as well, whether it's a 10-10 or a 30-30-30 or a 2-4. As long as you're getting failure and you're maintaining tension, it will do the job. No story for that one.
I concur.
He concurs. Eric, do you concur? Eric concurs. Eric is the most important.
Thank you, Eric, for concurring.
All right. What about rest intervals? How long do you rest between sets?
Not at all.
Is it important? Well, that's a good question. Again, if you're out there reading this stuff or you're nerding out on it, some people will tell you have to rest longer, like at least 3 minutes to maximize testosterone or to get as much recovery as possible. Some people will recommend resting shorter durations.
Yes.
Okay, but the rest of it is the time spent in the set, right? And scientific evidence shows that it has little effect on strength gains. Okay, for pure muscle growth, you don't really need to worry about your rest intervals. Take as much or as little time as you like. However, the rest intervals may make a difference for your metabolic conditioning effect. So if you want to emphasize the metabolic conditioning, which some of our clients really do, then you want to purposely shorten the rest time. So, and that's between the sets themselves. So again, you can almost think of high intensity strength training as like a form of really, really high output interval training. You're taking your system to momentary muscular failure, and then you're only resting long enough to move to the next movement in that workout. And if you do that, there's been lots of proof that this is extremely effective for metabolic conditioning or global metabolic conditioning. And obviously the greatest study to support that is the famous Project Total Conditioning done in the 70s at West Point, probably the most comprehensive strength training study ever performed. A lot of people will poo-poo the results because it was never actually published in professional journals, but it was extremely well documented. They tracked everything with time. They were actually filming every set with multi-angle synchronous cameras. They tracked all the data meticulously and had incredible outputs. They not only increased their strength, obviously, by a huge amount in a short amount of time, but they decreased their time to run 2-mile runs. They increased their flexibility. They increased jumping heights, all kinds of stuff, all from these brief, intense strength training. So we're big fans of the minimal rest between sets effect, but this is difficult to do if you're in a commercial gym setting. You may find it actually impossible because there's always a line, right? You have this amazing plan on paper, and then you go to the next movement on your list, and some guy's like, I got 5 more sets, bro. And you got to like change gears, or, you run into that everywhere you go. So in a commercial gym, it's very difficult to do. If you have a home gym set up, you could easily create a really brief, intense workout like this. Or in our studio system, because we aren't as crowded and we have a little more control, we can also create that effect.
I concur.
So the recommendation is select your own rest interval for the muscle growth. Rest long enough between the exercise to allow for proper form on each exercise. Don't rush, but also you don't need to rest longer than necessary. Use shorter intervals if metabolic conditioning is the goal.
Yeah, some people really enjoy the high intensity training / high intensity interval training. So it's not the same thing. If we're going to oversimplify, high intensity training is just doing one single set to muscular failure per exercise and then moving on to the next one in a workout. High intensity interval training would be just sort of doing an exercise for a set period of time and doing as many repetitions as possible. You might reach muscular failure or you might not, and then you would have a set rest interval and then go on to the next thing. But some people really enjoy mixing the two. So I might do like a push-up to muscular failure and then immediately do 30 seconds of mountain climbers. And then I might finish those mountain climbers and do a chin up to muscular failure, and then immediately do 30 seconds on a sprint on the Airdyne bike. And we do format many people's workouts that way here at TNT because number one, they enjoy it and it makes them want to keep coming back and do their workouts. And number two, they get great results. And number three, it's validated by people like Dr. Wayne Westcott, who we had on as a guest here on the TAT podcast.
And Dr. Ellington Darden.
Ellington Darden. So two well-accomplished researchers in the field of exercise science. And so we like to follow the lead of smart, industrious exercise physiologists.
One of the most brutal workouts, talk about old school, similar to what Jesse described, but extremely, extremely hard, was one that they designed for these football players back in the 70s, where they basically just set up these chin up and dip stations, and they would do chin ups to failure, run out 50 yards, back 50 yards, dips to failure. And they had to do that with no rest. Chin to failure, 50 out, 50 back, so 100 yards, dips to failure, and just repeat that like 10 or 12 times without stopping. And if you've never tried anything like that, it is brutal, and it will crush almost anyone, honestly. And obviously you can imagine you have to be extremely strong and well-conditioned to, most people would, no matter how many chin-ups you can do on that first set, you're going to find them dropping precipitously on each continued bout. And you're going to be redlining basically your entire system from that sprint and combination of the chins and dips. You will be wiped out. And, in about probably 10 or 12 minutes, you can imagine being just crushed by a workout like that. And the idea back then was for football players to be just in such good shape that they would not have to huddle, and just to be able to bring the offense continuously and just like crush the opponents, right? Because these guys wouldn't be expecting them to just set play after play after play.
Yeah, man, I think that's a common strategy in sports in general, right? I mean, we saw the University of Oregon have a lot of success with that strategy. The Golden State Warriors, do that a lot, where they just run the floor fast, and that's during their dynastic championship runs. They would just not take timeouts, and the other team would score, and they would run it back fast, and the other team just couldn't catch their breath.
Yeah, so you can imagine what that would be like. And, football being such a highly specialized sport these days, with these guys, literally, you'll see these guys, run a play that takes 3 seconds and then go and sit on the sidelines breathing oxygen. They're like, and these guys are not in bad shape, right? They're like at the peak of their game, but it's so intense and anaerobic. It's just wiping them out.
That's another interesting thing to mention. Sometimes as you go through your strength and conditioning journey, you might find yourself thinking, why does this feel so hard today? And something I like to remind people of is, you might do like the same workout that you did a few months back or something like that, and you might feel more tired this time around than you did a couple months ago. And what I tell people is that, you're not in worse shape. Like we've been tracking, like you've got more muscle and you're lifting heavier weights. And that's exactly why you are more tired. Your work capacity has increased to meet the demands of the workout, right? So basically, in layman's terms, you used to be lifting lighter weights and the workout was easier, and you're actually able to work out harder now, which means that you're going to be a little bit more tired. Harder you work, the more tired, the greater the workout demand, the greater the recovery demand.
Yeah. So all good things. And, back to the high intensity interval thing. The truth about high intensity interval stuff is people use that as like a name for something that they're doing, but very rarely do people actually work as hard as they can in those intervals, regardless of what they are. The most common thing is the Tabata intervals, which have been around for 30 years now. And, was based on research done out in Japan by this guy, Izumi Tabata, where, this stuff was done in the lab. And it was, these intervals where you worked as hard as you could for 20 seconds, and then you only recover for 10 seconds, and you repeat that 8 times. So the whole thing takes 4 minutes. In the lab, they were working above their maximum capacity. Again, it was all tracked, gases are being captured, all kinds of things. Most people just use that time interval, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, and they say, I did it Tabata, but they never actually worked hard. And I've seen this so many times in different settings. I've had people come up, I'll prescribe a workout, and I'll have people go, that wasn't really that hard, the workout. And I'm like, well, I said jump as high as you can, and you were jumping 1 inch off the ground, right? Like, people they're constantly conserving energy, consciously or unconsciously, and not going as hard as they can, because if you do go as hard as you can, it is tough. And so if you really want to feel and get the benefits from this type of stuff, this interval training, whatever you're doing, you need to put in the effort. It's true for strength training. It's true for cardiovascular training. It's true for anaerobic conditioning. Effort is required.
I concur.
Hey, what are those guys doing here? Whenever I feel like I'm stalling out on my bench press, I know I need a new strength curve.
Whether you're stalling out on the road or stalling out in the gym, you need something with great engineering.
That's right. And
So
I
look
want
for the pendulum.
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 Not just your average strength machines.
No, they have smooth strength curves.
Amazing rigidity.
And did we mention the engineering's fantastic?
That's right. Not to mention, they come in cool colors.
Like red.
And silver. Well, that was kind of weird. What was that all about? Back to the interview.
All right, we're going to talk about a very, very tough subject. One, all these things would get debated forever. And this is volume and frequency. All right. Volume and frequency, that's referring to the number of sets and how many training sessions you're doing in a week or whatever, right? Okay, this is the area that shows probably the greatest disparity between what most people, including veteran lifters, believe and what the science says. And again, these things have been coming out for years. Now, lately, we're hearing a lot about how volume is better. Volume is better. Like little studies keep coming out. Okay, but ultimately, in my experience, there's not that much evidence that really shows that performing more than one set of each exercise is better for muscle growth, hypertrophy, whatever, if that set is done to failure. Okay, there's little evidence to support any recommendation as to frequency at all. Some studies have reported no difference with training frequency of once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. Some show 2 times a week is better. Then it's funny. There's one study was recently quoted I saw out where they showed that 2 times was actually better than 1 time or 3 times. So again, there's stuff all over the place, but we recommend 2 times a week. It seems to work for a huge population, which is what we're looking for. What is the most applicable? Again, and looking for safety and efficiency, allowing for recovery, all those types of things. Because, right, there's so many details. So our recommendation is single set training appears to be just as effective as multiple sets for muscle growth. There's not a lot of evidence for recommendations as to frequency. Okay, and based on my own experience, I recommend training 1 to 3 times a week, depending on your individual recuperation and response. For me, honestly, for me personally, I like to train about once every 5 to 7 days. And again, if you break out of that Gregorian calendar and actually are keeping records, paying attention, tracking things, you will likely find the frequency that is optimal for you. And it may not fit into that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, right? So you need to experiment. And if you're keeping notes and you're tracking and you're starting to stall out, your numbers, we like to say, the numbers don't lie. Most often you'll find that it's because you need more recovery, right? So if you're training it to failure and you're making progress for several months, and then all of a sudden you seem to be stuck 3, 4 workouts in a row, your numbers aren't going up, you're stuck at the same reps at the same weight, usually you need recovery. And one thing to do would be take a week off, which is never a bad thing if you've been training consistently. And another thing to do is add an extra day off in between. Instead of going every second day, go every third day, go every fourth day, right? And pay attention to this. And you may find that your training starts to get further and further apart. And that's okay, all right? Most of us are trying to cram it into that Monday through Friday week or that 7-day week, instead of recognizing that if you have a floating schedule. So some weeks you might train on a weekend and some weeks you may not, if that schedule's floating. But ultimately, that may be the schedule that gives you the best results.
The main thing is that you should make sure that you're making progress. Unless you don't care about progress, but if you're listening to this, you must care about progress, because why would you be listening to it if you don't want a positive change in your life and your fitness? So whether you're resting 1 day or 2 days or 5 days or 10 days between your workouts, make sure you're tracking it all and making sure that you're making progress from one workout to the next.
Yeah. One up yourself. Remember, write it down. Try to do more than you did last time. It's not hard, people. All right. We're going to talk about endurance training and strength training. Combining those things. Does one interfere with the other? Again, there's been different, outcomes to people looking into this, but ultimately, I think a lot of people worry that doing endurance training might hinder their lifting. Like if lifting's your goal, and so they might avoid it, but there's no evidence to show that endurance training will interfere with your strength training outcomes. But will it affect your recovery time? That's one of the things recovery is important. So you need to balance out the different components. If you're someone who likes to run and you like to lift, you need to look at how things are affecting. You also need to look at what is your number one goal, right? If your number one goal is strength training, you may structure it so that you feel your strength training workouts are being the least interfered with. And if you're a cardio dominant person, vice versa, right? So again, I usually think it's best to prioritize the thing that you're trying to improve the most, right? And this goes down to even individual strength workouts, right? Like you can create a strength workout. Like the classic model is you always do legs first or bigger muscles first. Never start with biceps or abs. But you know what? If you're trying to prioritize, put that thing in the front of the list. If your goal is to get big guns, big biceps and triceps, do arms first, right? Because you'll have the most energy available to put into that. That's just a little side note. But ultimately, for the recommendations, endurance training doesn't hinder your muscle growth. So put it in there wherever you feel like it.
Yeah, I had a guy come in to train this morning who's a marathon runner. He actually does like ultra marathons, and he ran a 5K before he came into strength train today. And we normally do 8 or 10 exercises per workout, and he usually makes progress in most, if not all of them. But today he made progress in about 3 out of 9 or 10. And I told him, I just reminded him that, inside of a day, right? So I think what Liam's talking about is, if on Monday you lift weights, on Tuesday you can go for a run. But prioritize inside of a day, whatever happens first is what gets prioritized, because your body only has a finite amount of energy. So I reminded this guy that he probably should run after his strength training if he wants to do a run in the same day, and if he wants to prioritize, making strength gains. Now, today he did some good things. He kind of solidified this habit of lifting weights, which is good. And he did make progress in a couple of the exercises. But remember, the purpose of strength training is to get stronger. And so if he's not actually able to one-up himself from last time, then he has not really gotten the benefits of the strength training today. The major benefit, which is stimulating new strength changes.
Yeah. And again, people combine these things in a million different ways. All kinds of ways. Some guys used to do 2-a-days, right? In sports and even with lifting, they used to lift in the morning, then go home and then lift at night, there's been a million different things. For me, if you are going to do those things in the same day, running and lifting, for example, and you want to get some quality effort out of each, I would personally try to keep a good chunk of time between them, like a minimum of about 4 hours, break them up, not just run and then lift or lift and then run, again, if your goal is to improve these things and really be able to put some effort and focus and stuff on it, probably a little break in between would be better. But again, it's you got to experiment and keep track. I've been keeping training journals going back to the beginning of my career, and they've really taught me a lot, because I can look back and see like if some things are making progress and some things are stalling out, and you can learn a lot from tracking this stuff. We track our nutritional stuff too, and I've done it over the years, but now I've basically been doing it daily since 2019, and you definitely learn a lot when you keep records. All right, here's a big one: range of motion. This is getting a lot of attention lately because all this research suddenly has been coming out that you should be training things in a lengthened position, right? There's been a lot of stuff about that, that it's somehow better for hypertrophy. But most trainers recommend that you use a full range of motion for each rep in order to get the most growth. But again, there's no evidence that shows that this is required. Okay, a restricted range of motion appears to increase strength and size as much as a full range. I know that seems almost blasphemous. What we say here at TNT is movement you can control through a range of motion that's pain-free, right? And when I say pain-free, we're talking structurally pain-free, right? Because not the discomfort of effort, which builds up in anyone who's training to momentary muscular failure. So that some people associate that as pain, right? That discomfort when you're working hard. So we're not talking about that type of discomfort, but if some kind of structural thing like, ow, my elbow hurts when I move it past this distance or whatever, then you can train around those things, usually train below that point, above that point, wherever you can, where you can put resistance against the function and not trigger the structural issues. We've played with strong range partials. I've been doing it on and off since the 90s and had tremendous success with it as a pure strength training tool for all body parts, all muscle groups. and literally done just that type of training with myself, with my clients, where you limit the range. And again, when the range is shorter and you're in the quote unquote strong range, obviously the loads will go up tremendously. As a squat or a leg press or a bench press, we all know we can lift more near lockout than we can close to the chest or close to the bottom of a squat or leg press. So the importance is you need to load appropriately so that it's challenging and you can still achieve failure in those ranges, and again, do it safely. So as far as range of motion recommendations, I recommend training within a range of motion you can fully control, which is pain-free, and experiment, which is always good, and use the range of motion that you like.
I concur.
I am knocking them out of the park today, man. I feel like I'm batting 1,000. If Jesse concurs, I'm doing pretty good. He hasn't argued with me at all. I wonder if Cappy concurs.
Oh, yeah.
Eric has disappeared, so we're not getting his stamp of approval. So machines versus free weights. Oh boy, can of worms right there. Which one?
Machines are better, case closed.
I like it. I concur. No. Now look, another controversial area. Evidence directly comparing the two is really meager, but machines do increase size and strength. A muscle doesn't know whether you're using a machine or a barbell or a sandbag or a box of rocks, as we sometimes like to say. Okay, machines may make it easier to perform lifts to failure, which for us is a good thing. And for instance, trying to go to failure on a set of squats, like barbell squats, may be asking for trouble, right? It could be scary, dangerous. Other things might break down other than like the target, which is the quads, right? We know the lower back often gives out. Again, are you using the right equipment, safety, rack, all that kind of stuff, good spotters. But if you're on machines, it's not really usually a problem, depending on those type of machines. You can use leg presses or hack squats or Smith machines. Ultimately, the research has been showing, even recent research, that there's really no difference, right? And the tool, we call ourselves tool agnostic. So our personal recommendation is that muscle overload can be applied with a variety of tools. Doesn't matter, barbells, dumbbells, machines, manual resistance, body weight, sandbags, whatever, right? Anything that can create high tension in the muscle can be used. Use the machines, use free weights, or any combination that you like.
I concur. And I'll add that if anybody ever tries to tell you that one specific tool is the best and everything else is terrible, like all these different camps, or kettlebell levers and barbell levers and machine levers and calisthenics levers and resistance band levers, and everybody's got their favorite tool. If anybody ever tries to tell you that one thing is the best and everything else sucks, they're a marketer. They're not coming from things from an objective perspective. They're trying to sell something or sell you something, which everybody's got to do, right? Got to make your living, and people in the fitness industry are no different. But at the end of the day, you can get good results with any of these tools if you know how to use them properly. So that's what Liam's saying about us being tool agnostic. We like to use all of these different tools with as many of our clients as it is appropriate with, because for no other reason, it brings some variety to the workouts, and variety is one of the things that keep people engaged and interested and consistent with their workouts. And that's how you stay in good shape over a lifetime.
I concur.
TAKU concurs.
Yeah, and I agree 100% actually with Jesse. So I've been saying that for years. Like usually if someone is telling you that this one thing is the best thing, it's really just either marketing, as he said, or just personal preference, right? Some guys love kettlebells and they think they're the best. Some guys love to do Olympic weightlifting. But are those things required for success? No. And is there anything wrong with them preferring them? No. But if they're telling you, as Jesse mentioned, that that's the only way to do it, yeah, then you can just probably go looking for something else.
Unless you really like that thing.
Yeah.
And then great, you found the perfect person for you. And that's why they do what they do, because that's the whole thing about advertising. When you are sending a message to the wrong people, they all think you're stupid and crazy. But when your message lands with the right people, they think you're a genius.
There you go. I think that flies on the juice.
Yeah, that was a monster fly.
There was a fly. It almost picked up Jesse and carried him away. All right. So training and detraining. We covered this briefly already, a little bit about what that really means is recovery or taking time off or whatever. Okay. So after just as little as 3 weeks of strength training, you can produce results. We usually tell people they will feel a difference, notice a difference within 2 weeks of working with us. Okay. But if you're an untrained person, you can start to get results in as little as 3 weeks. Okay. Of more interest though is how long does it take when no training's done, right? To lose that muscle. I had a client come in yesterday actually who said, I lost muscle because I was gone for a week. Right? And again, 3 weeks of no training appears to have little to no effect on muscle strength. Most dedicated lifters don't ever take that much time off, right? They rarely they don't want to miss. But allowing for adequate rest from training sessions is very important, and even long durations, considerable length, will not hurt your gain. So we find all the time that people train with us for 6 months, a year, and they end up, they take a vacation, right? They go to Europe for a couple of weeks, and they come back and they go, oh, I guess I need to go lighter, or I probably got weaker or whatever. We expect those people to not only be just as strong as when they left, but often to set new PRs, right? Because they're actually very recovered, right? They haven't been doing any training, and their bodies that they've been eating, relaxing, having fun. And so it's not unusual for them to come back from this extended length of time, as much as even a month, and actually make improvements. So
give me a break. Give me a break. Break me off a piece of that. I am totally blanking. What is the thing?
You got it. You're so close.
Piece of that Chrysler car.
Nope.
Football cream.
Okay. It's football cream. It's football cream.
Break me off a piece of that Europe trip.
There we go. So our recommendation for that is if you feel like you need to take some time off, or you can't manage to get to the gym for any reason, stuff gets in the way, don't worry about it.
I concur.
All right. We are crushing it. So, based on all these things we've been talking about, because we did a little stuff, as we mentioned, we did our how to pick a trainer. We did how to build the home gym. We got 7 training guidelines based on all these things that we've been mentioning that we would give to anyone who's just sort of trying to get started. Okay. And this is all based on the research. 7 straightforward guidelines, which have been shown to work. Number 1, select 1 or 2 free weight or machine exercises or any tool you like for each major muscle group. Okay. And you can change them around. You don't have to do the same ones all the time. Okay. Number 2, your lifting duration should be consistent with good form throughout each repetition, right? We recommend 3 to 5 seconds up, 3 to 5 seconds down is a great place to start. Not too slow, not too fast. When in doubt, slow it down and do as many reps as you can perfectly, all right? Number 3, the range of repetitions could be from 3 all the way up to 20, okay? It doesn't really matter. It might vary based on the load, on the range of motion, from exercise to exercise, workout to workout. Again, you can mix those things up. You can cycle through and try experiment. Experimentation is important. Each of us is doing an experiment with an N of 1, right? Keep the records. The only thing that matters is you and your results against yourself. Number 4, continue each set until it becomes difficult to do a perfect repetition, okay? Train to momentary muscular failure. The level of effort required for optimal strength gains is unknown. Nobody can tell you it's 76% of your max or 82%. Nobody knows. They only can measure 0 or maximum. The best thing to do is train as hard as you can and be done. Number 5, do 1 set of each exercise. It's the best place to start, right? You can't have 0 sets and have a workout. There is very little evidence to suggest that multiple sets of each exercise are superior to a single set for strength gains. We do it every day. We see the results week after week, month after month, year after year, okay? We play with all types of protocols, but most of the time, 1 set and it gets the job done, all right? Number 6, rest long enough between the exercises so that you can allow for proper form, right? Make sure you feel ready to go. You don't need to rush, and you don't need to stick to some rigid schedule, 5 minutes between sets, whatever. Go when you're ready so you can get the most out of your workout. As your conditioning improves, you might have an eye on shortening that rest over time. One thing I like to do is time the workout when I start and when I stop. And we do this a lot with each other. I start the stopwatch on the first rep of the first set, and I stop it at the end. And I see that the workout, 10 exercises, took me 17 minutes. I'm just making this stuff up. I can do that same workout, and over time, I find that I get that workout done in 15 minutes, 14 minutes, 13 minutes. So I'm actually a more powerful engine. I'm getting the same work done in less time, right? That's another way to show improvement. You're more powerful if you can get that work done in less time than before. Okay, it's another way to track things. Number 7, train each muscle group 1 or 2 times a week, depending on individual recuperation and response. All right, that's enough. A couple times a week per muscle is plenty. A lot of times you hear volume, meaning like how many sets. Again, there's a lot of stuff out there. A lot of times you hear the number 10 is important, 10 sets per muscle. When they say that, they mean per week, not per workout. So if you accrue that over your couple of workouts, you've hit the goal. You don't need to do 10 sets per muscle per workout and work out 6 days a week. All right, that's it, people. That's the 7 strength training guidelines. That's what we're talking about, effort-based, evidence-based. That's what we do here at TNT. And Jesse
Concurs.
yes, boom, baby.
Bingo.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Boom, baby.
What's up, people? Thank you so much for listening to this episode of
Truth, not trends.
That's right here at TNT Strength Headquarters, Truth Not Trends.
Please, if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, rate, and review us on whatever platform you're listening to us on. And don't forget to share with a friend.
You can find us on the web at tntstrength.com.
That's right, TNT Strength now coming to you in person at 5255 College Avenue in Oakland, California. You can call the studio 510-768-5421. You can also text us at 855-796-9905.
Or shoot us an email at contact@tntstrength.com. And whatever you do, stay off of that stupid blue bubbly bosun.
By Grabthar's hammer.
Mixed and edited by Desmond McNeese for We Mixed It, LLC. Go to whatsoundsawesome.com.
Dynamite drop-in money. That broadcast school has really paid off.